So if somebody wanted to get started with, they've not touched Vim at all, and they want to get to the point where they are writing whatever their language of choice is in Vim. What would be the process that you would suggest they take?
Yes, this is a great question. Start with motions, right? The hardest thing to do is just to use Vim. You don't know the motions, and it's like, and now you also are in this program that looks nothing like what you're used to. Have you ever read any C.S. Lewis, the Out of the Silent Planet?
No.
Okay, super great sci-fi book, and effectively, Ransoom, the main character, gets abducted and he has to go to Mars. And when he lands on Mars, he looks out and he describes something which is like super, super clever observation of humankind. Where have you ever seen something you've never seen before? And it's like you can't even see it. It's like right in front of you, but you can't see it. And so he describes his experience where there's mountains, there's trees, and there's lakes. And I couldn't see any of it. It was so different than what I was used to looking at. I just couldn't see the landscape. It was in front of me. There was colors, but I was blind to the whole thing. So using Vim for the first time, you kind of get that experience. You don't have a file tree that's ever present. You don't have the tools running along the top. You don't have some other kind of command window right here. You don't have the terminal running across the bottom, right? You don't have this extremely familiar setup. You look at it and you just feel like you can't see the code that's directly in front of you. I even remember my first time using Vim. It was hard for me to program, despite being a good programmer, because I felt like I couldn't understand the code in front of me because it just was such a different experience. And so I feel like that analogy just really kind of drives it home. And so I suggest using motions first, understand how to move in Vim. Then, if you really want to make the jump, use Kickstarter NeoVim, which is like a script, and it walks through exactly how to program a config. Very, very easy. I can get the exact link for it. Very, very simple. Walks through everything. I think TJ has helped out on a lot of it. There's a couple pretty cool people from the community that have worked out and done some good stuff on it. They don't have Harpoon, hurts my feelings, but they do have Telescope. And it'll set you up with a pretty decent NeoVim experience all the way up to the LSP, and you'll have a nice time. And it will not feel as confusing because you at least know how to move. Then it's just trying to get your mind used to not seeing a file tree. So then you're like, oh, I know enough about Vim now that I've read Kickstarter. I'm just going to open up a file tree and just set it here. And just put it there. Just for the sake of you've always had a file tree there. Just put a file tree there so you feel comfortable for a little bit. And then slowly remove things and kind of get off the training wheels. I'm a big fan of only ever having one buffer open. I'm not a big fan of splits. Like, just learn how to navigate your files really, really quickly, and then you don't need it as much. TJ would completely disagree with that. So, fun times.
Yeah, one of the things I found when I first started learning Vim was getting it to a baseline point. And something like Kickstart, I think, would have helped me a lot back then.
Yeah, it's really nice. Like, when you look through it, it's like 200 lines of documentation, like 150 lines of Lua. It's extremely simple.
Because one of the things that is really unapproachable with Vim is the first time you open up those Vim docs and you're like, okay, everything's really well documented. It's that book problem where if you start reading about a language first, you're like, I cannot retain any of this knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why I think learn the motions first, feel really comfortable with it, wait till they're second nature, and then maybe consider the jump into actual Vim.
Yeah, while I use Vim, I wouldn't say I use Vim well. I am very heavy on the HJKNL moving around. I know I know a couple of motions to do a couple of things, like, get to the start of the line, get to the end of a line, things like that. Jumping to specific line numbers, but I have seen some of those shorts you put out, and it's just like you just 20 key press. You're like, oh, just do this, and it does like all of this magical stuff. Like, what did you just do? What?
So a good thing to do is just adopt one motion.
Right.
Like, that's it. Don't do anything else. Don't try to get a whole bunch in. Just try something. Like, so if you don't use F and T, then start using F and T. Very, very fantastic. For those that don't know, that is jumping forward by the character. So if I say F, capital S, it will jump to the first occurrence of capital S on the line I'm currently at. Okay, so you kind of get that one. All right, well then start navigating with Control D and Control U. Like, force yourself to use a half-page jumps. You'll get
Mhm.
used to it pretty quick. I actually only got used to it because I started using Tmux,
Mhm.
and then since that was the way to navigate up, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is actually really easy. At first, it's super disorienting, but now it's actually super easy. Okay, awesome. I'm going to start using that.
Mhm.
Uh, and so now I use that exclusively. Then I actually built a game in NeoVim so I could learn how to relative jump. So 10J, all that, just so I could force myself into the habit. It's a
Mhm.
great habit to be in. And once you learn, once you just do it enough, that's why I built the game. So I just do it enough.
Mhm.
It's super easy. Then you get really good at it. So I just kind of did one little motion at a time. And so my big new motions right now is just using much more C. C
Mhm.
is really fantastic. C does the delete then into insert mode.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And so my favorite command right now is here. I'll paste it to you. But when I'm copying from one thing and going to another thing, I love YIW. That will yank the entire contiguous piece of code I'm on
Mhm.
up until white spaces on both sides. Then I can go to another place and VIW to highlight another section of code and then paste in my previous one, right? And so, like, have you ever had like you have like pattern matching? You have
Yep.
almost the exact same sentence you need to do again. So I
Mhm.
like paste it, change one of them, and then either use dot. And if I can't use dot just to replay it, I'll just like yank out the thing I want and then paste it somewhere else. Like IW is so much fun. If you don't use IW, it is just so sweet.
What would you say to people who think that learning all of this is sort of just like a waste of time and is a distraction when you could just be writing code in VS Code, IntelliJ, whatever editor of choice it is? Like, what do you have to say to those people?
Generally, I think it's mostly a lame excuse. And what I mean by a lame excuse is I don't mean it's it's not lame to say, hey, I really want to focus on um, code.
Sure.
That's fine. But what I see is it's learning Vim and doing that isn't about wasting your time.
Mhm.
It's about you really wanting to learn your tools better.
Mhm.
Right? If you use Vim, you'll also find that you have to use grep more often, or sed, or you'll have to get JQ, or you'll have to do, like you start learning your entire system. You just learn more about things.
Mhm.
And so I think that at the end of the day, due to me using Vim,
Mhm.
I have become a significantly better programmer because I'm more significantly aware of my environment. And I don't know if I would have ever been that if I would have stuck to something like IntelliJ, because I would have just used Control Shift F, searched for all the things, learned how to do all the replace, just use which is a very convenient set of tools, but
Mhm.
those tools just also exist everywhere. I would have
Right.
opened logs in IntelliJ and searched through logs and do all that. But now that I'm getting pretty good with JQ, I open logs in Vim, highlight all my logs, execute a JQ statement. It will reduce all my logs into now just a couple keys and all that. And I can go, okay, I like these ones. All right, let's filter again. And like, there's some cool stuff you can do by piping in and out of a file to the command line and back.
Mhm.
It's like super neat. And it's just like I wouldn't have learned all those things if I didn't, do that. And yeah, sure, it was kind of a waste of time configuring an editor, but it also has made me a better engineer. So I'm happy.
That makes sense. No, that definitely does make sense.